I'm Carrie. This video is all about how I created a Loki Variant cosplay for myself and my alligator, Delilah. Why did I do this? Well, I was watching the Loki series on Disney Plus, thinking, okay, Tom Hiddleston is cute, but where is this going? Then, bam! There's an alligator Loki and things got a whole lot more interesting. Such a cute little vicious reptilian trickster. Friends started telling me I needed to make Delilah a Loki helmet. Okay, but I wanted to be a Loki variant too. I'm primarily a historical costumer and just getting into cosplay. And historical cosplay where you combine the two forms of costuming seems particularly fun. Sylvie is great, but why is there only one female Loki variant?
Have any of you met a woman variant of us?
Sounds terrifying.
There should be a bunch. Can you imagine? A sisterhood of Loki ladies. That could be totally awesome or catastrophic. Anyway, I wanted to make a pretty dress in Loki colors, and I have this green, gold, and beige vintage polyester sari I bought years ago and was too scared to use. But I always meant to turn it into a Regency gown, and inspiration smacked me in the face. Regency Queen Loki and her quite queenly female alligator Loki. My head started spinning with our backstory. My Nexus event was attempting to take over Midgard during Britain's Regency period when George III was ill and the Prince Regent was too busy overindulging in food, wine, and women. Why wait until 2012? Delilah's Nexus event was eating the Tesseract, and even though she vomited up later like a cat horking up a hairball, she was branded as a dangerous variant. So the TVA sent us both to the Void, where we met and became inseparable. I used good old Laughing Moon pattern 126, ladies Regency bib front gown, view B, with the detachable sleeves and a gathered bodice as my starting point for my dress, at least the bodice and the sleeves. It took a hot minute to figure out which parts of the highly patterned green and gold section of the sari should be the bodice front, side back, and sleeves. And at this point, I was all about symmetry. Instead of gored skirt panels with curved bottom hems like in the pattern, I used one 119-inch long rectangle to preserve the gold and green border at the skirt hem, and therefore just had one skirt seam at the back to sew, and a lot of pleating to do. I stitched the bib front exactly opposite the back skirt seam, a few inches below the top of the fabric because I would need that extra length at the back to accommodate the waistline, which curves up at the back. There would be no skirt hemming after the fact to correct my mistakes, so I had to be sure and get this accurate from the start. I then measured out to where I wanted to cut the slits for the bib front opening, 14 inches from the center of the bib, and carefully cut straight down 6.5 inches. I think the pattern calls for 11-inch slits, but those aren't necessary if you are not curvy. I sewed tiny rolled hems along the slits, then pleated the sides of the skirt front down from 28 inches to 18. This is wider than in the pattern, but I hate gaping side slits in bib front gowns and would rather there is significant overlap. I then sewed on the ties, basically a long piece of the green border, folded lengthwise and stitched. Then it was time for the skirt back. Emma likes to steal my chair when I get up for 1 second. I used the halving method to pleat the skirt back, approximately 90 inches down into 23, and I stitched across the pleats before sewing the skirt back to the bodice. I have a good 2 inches of overlap between the skirt back and the front, which I like. No gaping, no scandalous views of my corset. Sylvie comments on how uncomfortable her outfit is when talking with Loki in the Void, and I was having none of that. The width of the sari limited my skirt length, and I'm grateful. I usually make skirts too long. The skirt is 41 inches long at the front, perfect dancing and battle length, you know, if you are at a ball or plotting to take over the world. The bodice front felt too poofy, so I stitched a piece of fabric down the center to give it more shape, much like view C in Laughing Moon. I still had a bunch of sari fabric left, so I made a cute reticule using the same pattern and methods as in my pink alligator reticule in the video linked in the description and here. Or here? I used buttons for the starflower centers instead of little puff balls and did the same on 8 flowers I stitched to the dress, abandoning symmetry for artful asymmetry. I hope. Detachable sleeves came next, which I will likely never detach because I love the way they look on the dress. I completely hand sewed the sleeves and the chemisette I made, mostly using the pattern in the American Duchess Guide to 18th Century Dressmaking. I also made a neck ruffle for Delilah, but I think she looks clownish in it, so maybe it will become part of a skirt for her later on. We'll see. But now I only have tiny scraps of the sari left. Hooray for stash busting. I puzzled over Delilah's Loki Horns for weeks, watched a bunch of tutorials, ignored them all, and decided on polymer clay horns so I would not have to buy any new materials. Here's what I used. 16 gauge wire, 20 gauge wire, 4 packages of polymer clay, all the same brand but different colors, dark gold pixie dust, and liquid polymer clay. I started by shaping the 16 gauge wire into the general curve of the horns I wanted. Yes, Delilah. Doubling the wire and then wrapping it with 20 gauge wire to keep the stiffer stuff in place. I did not have any gold polymer clay, so I just smooshed what I had together and ran it through my pasta machine, which I only use for polymer clay, about 1,000 times. Just kidding, like 10. It turned out pinkish purple. I cut the polymer clay sheet into rectangular strips and wrapped those around the wire horns. They are kind of knobbly, but with a lot of hand smoothing, they will work. Time to coat these things in gold. The pixie dust is a powdered glass used in glass bead making, and if like me you stopped making glass beads when you had a kid because hot glass and toddlers don't mix, it can also be used with polymer clay. I only use it in a well-ventilated area and with a mask on because it gets everywhere and you do not want pixie dust in your lungs. I brushed it on thick to cover the purple clay and was happy with the color. My liquid Sculpey, like the rest of the stuff, is pretty old, and you can see the separation, which might explain why it went on so runny and did not adhere to the pixie dust. But I did not figure this out until after I baked the horns in my oven, which I cleaned thoroughly afterwards. The first time I've cleaned my oven in over a decade. Yes. Costuming is problem solving. Costuming is problem solving. My husband sprayed a fixative and then a lacquer on the horns so the darn pixie dust would stick and still be shiny. And while the horns dried, I sewed fabric loops onto some thrifted pointy-toed flats to make ribbon lace-up shoes or whatever you call them. Now the horns won't spread pixie dust everywhere, although that could be fun in theory. Loki Tinkerbell? My husband constructed a wire helmet to which we could attach the horns, then a cereal box cardboard cover that I could decorate. At first, I glued on scraps of sari fabric, but they were too thin and did not look good. So I decided to cut dragon scales from some gold shantung and glue those on, after using Mod Podge on the edges as fray check. I was quite surprised to find that the helmet fits me too. To keep the horns in place on Delilah, I braided some beading material into 2 straps that I tied to the wire helmet base and that can be knotted under her chin. Or my chin if she ever lets me borrow it. Makeup intimidates me, but the dough color Time Stone palette on Amazon caught my eye, and I did have fun testing out all the colors on my arm. My eyes were a different matter, and I am still learning. But here is the final look. That weird, oh, look at me section of the video where my introvert heart wishes I could show you the costume in action without me actually in it. But that's not how reality works. Delilah is a bit less active than her TV counterpart. I think she has been hanging around the cats too much. She's also a bit harder to throw at enemies. But like cats, she loves hanging out on my lap, contemplating world domination. The gown is the perfect length for spinning, although the wind kept the skirts from displaying their full volume. The shoes are comfy and there's no way they'll fly off in battle, or while dancing. See, no gaping at the sides, even while doing yoga. Dancing, kicking, running, and fighting are all easier in this gown than any of my others, which are all a tad longer in the skirts. Please don't dance with knives. Do as I say, not as I do. It's a knife ballet, and when my audience is thinking, what the heck is she doing? I can implement my devious plans for taking over the world. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you'd like to see more zany sewing videos or videos about Jane Austen's novels and history, or the combination of these with geology, and videos where I can bring Delilah on as a guest visitor. Please comment below and let me know what you think of Delilah and our Loki cosplay. If you've made a Loki variant costume, or whatever else you are working on. Have a great day! Say bye. Say bye. Say bye. Good girl. Oh, what are you doing, sweetie? Oh.